The vast expanse of space surrounding Earth's solar system erupted into chaos as the first wave of enemy ships tore through the outer defense grid. On the bridge of Earth's flagship, all eyes were fixed on the holographic display. Red dots representing the invading force multiplied at an alarming rate, engulfing the blue markers of human defenses like a relentless tide. "Status report," barked the Admiral, his voice cutting through the tense atmosphere. "Enemy forces have breached our outer perimeter," came the swift reply. "They're advancing on multiple fronts, with the main thrust aimed directly at Earth. Our defensive lines are holding, but just barely." The attack had come swiftly, with an intensity that surpassed even their worst-case scenarios. But humanity had prepared for this moment, pouring every available resource into strengthening their defenses. "What's the status of our Martian colonies?" "Not good, sir. Enemy forces have established a blockade around Mars. Our supply lines are being systematically destroyed. If this continues, we'll lose all access to Martian resources within the hour." Mars, humanity's first successful off-world colony, was on the verge of being cut off, leaving Earth isolated and vulnerable. The space around Earth became a maelstrom of destruction. Human ships, though outnumbered and outgunned, fought with a ferocity born of desperation. Fighter squadrons darted between the massive enemy vessels, exploiting every weakness, every gap in their defenses. But for every enemy ship they managed to disable or destroy, two more seemed to take its place. "What's the status of our lunar defenses?" "Holding for now, but they're taking a beating. If the enemy manages to breach those defenses, they'll have a clear shot at Earth." They needed to buy more time, to hold out, until the reinforcements from the Galactic Council arrived. It was a risky strategy, one that left them vulnerable, but it was their best chance at turning the tide of this battle. A priority transmission came through from Lunar Command. The situation was critical. Their outer defenses were crumbling faster than anticipated. They needed to enact the Threshold Protocol immediately. The Threshold Protocol was their last resort, a desperate gambit that relied heavily on the promised support from the Galactic Council. It was a risky strategy, one that would leave Earth exposed if the reinforcements didn't arrive on time. "All right, people, this is what we've trained for. Initiate Threshold Protocol. All ships, prepare to execute Maneuver Omega-3. The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity as orders were relayed and battle plans set into motion. Outside, the space around Earth came alive with movement. Massive defense platforms, previously hidden within the lunar shadow, powered up their weapon systems. Swarms of fighter squadrons poured out of concealed hangars on Earth and its moon, forming intricate patterns designed to funnel the enemy into predetermined killing zones. As the human forces repositioned themselves, the enemy fleet pressed forward, seemingly oblivious to the trap being set. Their massive ships, a terrifying blend of organic and mechanical design, moved with an almost predatory grace. Energy weapons lashed out, carving swaths of destruction through the human defensive lines. The plan was working. The enemy was being drawn in, their formation becoming more concentrated as they pushed towards Earth. But the cost was high. With each passing minute, more human ships winked out of existence, their destruction marked by brief, silent flashes in the void of space. Enemy forces have breached our inner defense perimeter. They're making a push for low Earth orbit. This was the critical moment. If they could hold out just a little longer, the Council's reinforcements would arrive, catching the enemy in a devastating crossfire. Maintain formation. Redirect all available power to forward shields. We need to weather this storm. The next few minutes were a blur of chaos and destruction. The flagship shuddered under the impact of enemy fire, its shields flickering dangerously. All around them, human ships fought with desperate valor, throwing themselves against the overwhelming enemy force in a bid to buy just a few more seconds. "Send the signal to the Council. Tell them it's time. We need those reinforcements now." But as the final command was given, confusion and alarm spread across the bridge. "Sir, the transmission, it's not going through. I can't reach any of our usual channels to the Council." "What do you mean you can't reach them?" "Try emergency frequencies. Anything." Every attempt met with the same result. "It's no use, sir. It's like we're being jammed, but I can't detect any source. We're cut off." Without the Council's reinforcements, the Threshold Protocol wasn't just ineffective, it was a death sentence. They had concentrated their forces, drawn the enemy in close, all in preparation for an ally that wasn't coming. All ships fall back to secondary positions. Prepare for... A massive explosion rocked the flagship. Warning klaxons blared across the bridge as systems began to fail. Direct hit to our main reactor. We're losing power across all decks. As the final order was about to be given, the view screen flickered and went dark, plunging the bridge into an eerie, emergency-lit gloom. As chaos engulfed Earth's defenses elsewhere in space, a different scene unfolded. Meanwhile, the commander of the Nelvath fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, positioned at the designated staging point near the Earth system. He adjusted the communication device on his wrist, a nervous habit that betrayed his growing tension. "Status report," he said, voice modulating with underlying concern, gaze fixed on the tactical display showing Earth's solar system. The officer responded promptly, her hands moving with practiced precision across the console. "No change, Commander. We remain at our designated staging point, awaiting the signal from Earth to engage." The commander's posture shifted, a subtle movement suggesting growing unease. They had been stationed here for hours, poised to rush to humanity's aid at a moment's notice. The plan had been meticulously crafted. The humans would draw the enemy in, and then they would strike from multiple vectors, crushing the invaders in a devastating pincer movement. "Any word from the Earth forces?" he asked, voice calm but alert. The officer paused, then responded, "Nothing yet, sir. All channels remain open and monitored." As time passed, the initially clear communication lines began to fill with static, eventually fading into complete silence. The commander's tension grew, but he maintained his position, trusting in the human strategy. "Scan the Earth system," he ordered after a prolonged period of silence. "Maximum range. I want to know what's happening out there." The bridge crew activated their sensors, probing the vast distance between their position and Earth. Minutes ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. Finally, the officer spoke, her tone tight with confusion. "Commander, we're detecting massive energy discharges consistent with a large-scale battle. The conflict seems to be concentrated entirely within the Earth system." He watched the tactical display intently, noting the flashes of combat that lit up the Earth system like a distant thunderstorm. He waited, ready to give the order to move in at any moment, but the signal never came. For several agonizing minutes, the Nelvath fleet could only observe as the distant battle raged on. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The energy readings dropped sharply, leaving an eerie calm in their wake. "Status report," he demanded, voice steady. The officer analyzed the incoming data. "The battle appears to be over, sir. We're detecting a large number of ships leaving the Earth system at high speed. Based on their energy signatures, they appear to be the invading force." "And the Earth forces?" he asked. Her response was neutral. "No sign of organized fleet activity, sir. We're detecting widespread debris fields consistent with destroyed ships and stations." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. He stared at the main view screen, at the point of light that represented Earth. They had come here to help, had prepared for battle, only to bear silent witness to what appeared to be a devastating conflict. As the minutes stretched on with no further transmissions, no signs of activity from the Earth system, he opened a channel to the other commanders in his fleet. "All ships, report status and observations," he ordered. One by one, the other commanders confirmed what they had detected. The invading force had left the system, and the Earth forces seemed to have fallen silent. As they prepared to return to Council space, leaving behind the quiet Earth system, he found his thoughts turning to the humans he had known. He knew, from his previous battles alongside humans, that this could not be the end. Humanity would never simply vanish or be defeated so easily. Something else was happening here, something beyond what these sensors could reveal. The galactic war raged on, a relentless storm of destruction sweeping across star systems. Commander Zaxalath stood on the bridge of his battlecruiser, watching as another world burned. The Nelvath fleet had just obliterated an enemy stronghold, but the victory felt hollow. His thoughts drifted back to Earth, to the silent tomb of the Sol system. Weeks had passed since that fateful battle, yet that end still gnawed at him. Humanity's last stand had been too clean, too quiet. It contradicted everything he knew about their tactics, their sheer stubborn will to survive. "Commander," his second-in-command interrupted. "Council's calling for a full report on today's engagement." Zaxlath nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. "Prepare the data. I'll be in my quarters." In the privacy of his room, he pulled up the classified logs from the Earth campaign. He'd reviewed them countless times, searching for answers. Each time, the lack of debris, the absence of desperate transmissions, it all felt wrong. Weeks turned to months. Between battles, Zaxlath discreetly probed for information. He requested archives, interviewed survivors, even tried to access Earth's last transmissions. Each attempt hit a wall of bureaucracy and vague excuses. "Request denied, Commander," flashed across his screen for the dozenth time. "The Earth matter is closed. Focus on current war efforts." The constant dismissals only fueled his suspicions. Why such resistance for data on a defeated enemy? His persistence caught the attention of High Counselor Vex Ara. The ancient Nelvath's hologram flickered to life in Zaxlath's quarters. "Commander," Vex Ara's tone dripped with condescension, "your fixation on Earth is becoming a concern. The matter is closed. Do not pursue this further." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Zaxlath seething. The Council's hostility was disproportionate. It reeked of a cover-up. After a few weeks, Zaxlath found himself reassigned to patrol duty in a remote sector, a clear attempt to sideline him. But isolation brought unexpected opportunities. It started with a routine report. A supply convoy vanished in the outer rim. Zaxlath noted it, but didn't think much at first. Piracy wasn't uncommon in the fringes. Then another convoy disappeared, and another. Zaxlath mapped each incident, a chill running through him as a pattern emerged. The attacks were moving inward, spiraling slowly but steadily towards the core worlds. More unsettling was the complete lack of evidence. No distress calls, no debris fields. The convoys weren't just being attacked, they were vanishing without a trace. Zaxlath dug deeper, calling in favors from old contacts. A consistent story emerged, sightings of unidentified ships, there one moment and gone the next. "Ghost ships," one freighter captain told him, voice low. "Appeared out of nowhere right off our port bow. Sleek design, unlike anything I've seen. Before we could hail them, they vanished, like they were never there." Another account caught Zaxlath's attention. A patrol ship had briefly encountered an unidentified vessel near an abandoned mining outpost. The ship's captain, a veteran of numerous campaigns, swore the mystery craft bore an uncanny resemblance to old Earth destroyer designs. "It moved like nothing I've ever seen," the captain reported, eyes wide. "Pulled off maneuvers that should have torn a ship that size apart. Then, gone. Like a ghost." Zaxlath's mind raced. The description matched human combat doctrine. Swift, unpredictable strikes followed by rapid withdrawal. But it was impossible. Earth had fallen, hadn't it? Determined to uncover the truth, Zaxlath began altering his patrol routes. He focused on areas with reported ghost ship activity, pushing his crew to remain vigilant. For weeks, they found nothing but empty space and silence. Then, during a routine sweep of an abandoned trade route, alarms blared across Zaxlath's bridge. "Multiple contacts," his sensor officer shouted. "3 vessels came out of nowhere. They're on an intercept course." The main view screen flickered to life. Zaxlath's eyes widened. 3 ships had materialized from seemingly nowhere, their profiles unmistakably reminiscent of human design. But these weren't the proud warships he remembered. These vessels bore the scars of desperate battles and makeshift repairs, a patchwork of salvaged components giving them a feral appearance. "Evasive maneuvers," Zaxlath barked. "Do not engage unless fired upon. I want to see what they're after." The unknown ships moved with preternatural grace, executing a series of complex maneuvers that left Zaxlath's gunners struggling to get a lock. Their target soon became clear: a massive cargo freighter lumbering along the trade route. The attack was surgical. Weapon systems disabled with pinpoint accuracy, leaving the freighter dead in space but largely intact. Boarding pods latched onto its hull, and within minutes, the cargo ship's systems began powering down. "Sir," Zaxlath's second-in-command spoke up, tension in his voice. Should we intervene? Zaxlath hesitated, his heart pounding. This was his chance to gather concrete evidence. But if these truly were human survivors, engaging them now could shatter any hope of future dialogue. Negative, he decided, claws digging into his command chair. Maintain position and continue recording. We're witnesses, not combatants. The raid ended as swiftly as it began. The ghost ships detached from the freighter, their holds now laden with stolen cargo. As they prepared to jump to hyperspace, one vessel suddenly changed course, facing Zaxlath's ship directly. For a tense moment, Zaxlath thought they were about to be attacked. Instead, a brief transmission crackled through their comms, a series of seemingly random numbers and symbols that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Then, in a flash of displaced space, the ghost fleet was gone. Zaxlath's crew rushed to assist the stricken freighter and analyze the enigmatic transmission. But the commander's mind was already racing ahead. The tactics, the ship designs, the precision of the attack, it all pointed to one impossible conclusion. Humanity had not only survived, but was now waging a guerrilla war against the very allies who had abandoned them. Zaxlath knew he had to bring this information to the Council. But as he prepared his report, doubt gnawed at him. The bureaucratic resistance he had encountered, the Council's insistence on burying the Earth issue. What if there was more to the story than simple negligence? His suspicions were confirmed when he presented his findings at the next Council session. Instead of alarm or curiosity, Zaxlath was met with thinly veiled hostility and dismissal. These are nothing more than the desperate actions of pirates and scavengers, one high-ranking councillor declared, mandibles clicking in agitation. To suggest they are connected to Earth is absurd and borders on fear-mongering. Another councillor added, eyes narrowed. Commander Zaxlath, your fixation on this matter is becoming a liability. Focus your attention on more pressing matters. The war effort requires your full dedication. Zaxlath left the council chambers, his mind whirling. The council's overreaction only confirmed there was something to hide, but he also realized he had painted a target on his back. From now on, his every move would be scrutinized. In the cycles that followed, reports of ghost ship activities increased dramatically. What had once been isolated incidents in the Outer Rim now spread across Council space. Trade routes disrupted, outposts raided, and key military supply lines strained. If it's really them, the humans had been left for dead, abandoned by those who swore to help them. Now, they were rewriting the rules of engagement, striking from the shadows and vanishing like ghosts in the void. The silence of deep space pressed down on the bridge of Commander Zaxlath's battlecruiser, the hum of consoles the only constant in the void. For months, they had patrolled the outer sectors, chasing shadows and rumors. The attacks on Council convoys were increasing, but not a trace of the perpetrators lingered long enough to capture. Zaxlath leaned against the command dais, his two upper arms folded behind him as his secondary limbs drummed lightly on the metal rail. His mandibles clicked softly in irritation. These disappearances were no random pirate skirmishes. There was a mind behind them, a deliberate hand, and that disturbed him far more than he cared to admit. "Commander!" The sensor officer's voice shattered the lull, urgent but controlled. "We've intercepted a distress call from a council convoy, under attack near the Rylos Drift." Zaxlath straightened immediately, his crimson eyes narrowing. "Set course. Maximum speed. Bring up the transmission." The view screen flickered to life, projecting a crackling image of a freighter's bridge. Smoke filled the air, emergency lights strobing. "This is transport vessel Caltheron requesting immediate assistance. We are under heavy fire. Unknown assailants. Escorts down. Repeat, we need..." The feed cut abruptly. Zaxlath felt the weight in the pit of his chest tighten. "ETA?" he asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't satisfy him. 12 minutes, Commander. Too long. The convoy would be dust by the time they arrived. Yet something gnawed at him, a sense that this was not over, not yet. By the time they emerged from hyperspace, the battle was nearing its end. Debris drifted lazily through the black, shattered council escort ships flickering with dying energy signatures. The freighters, though battered, still hung in formation, their drives flickering weakly. But the attackers remained. 3 vessels, sleek and dark as shadows, twisted through the wreckage with predatory grace. Their hulls bore no insignia, their outlines angular and lean. Zaxlath's breath caught. There was something familiar about them. "Magnify those ships," he ordered. As the image expanded, his secondary heart gave a single, heavy thud. The design was unmistakable. Human engineering. Brutal, efficient, but different. These were not the pristine, proud warships of the Galactic Council's archives. These were something else. Hardened by years in the void, repaired with salvaged parts that gave them an almost feral appearance. Zaxalath's mandibles tightened. "Hold position. Do not engage. Let's see what they're after." The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances, but obeyed without hesitation. On screen, the lead vessel detached a series of grappling pods, latching onto the nearest freighter. Systems flickered, and the convoy's engines sputtered into silence. "They're boarding the freighters," the tactical officer said, disbelief coloring his tone. "Why not destroy them outright?" Zaxlath watched in silence, his mind racing. This wasn't pillaging. This was precision. Maintain distance. Observe. The attacking ships finished their operation in minutes, releasing the freighters as smoothly as they had arrived. One vessel lingered. It drifted lazily toward Zaxalath's position, as if considering him. "Commander," the comms officer whispered, "they're approaching." Zaxalath raised a hand. "Hold your fire." The sleek vessel paused just within weapons range. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then a burst of static rippled across their communications array. A string of numbers and symbols scrawled across the console, incomprehensible at first glance. Zaxlath stepped forward, staring at the encrypted message. This was their second encounter. And again, they tried to send a message. "Record and store it. I want a full analysis by the time we return to dock." As suddenly as they had come, the attacking ships veered away. Space rippled, and in the blink of an eye, they were gone. Only the crippled convoy remained. The bridge remained silent, save for the distant hum of machinery. "Prepare shuttles to assist the survivors," Zaxlath ordered at last, though his eyes never left the empty void where the human vessels had disappeared. He knew what he had seen. Those ships had not been phantoms. They were survivors, fighters, and whoever commanded them had not forgotten the betrayal that left Earth burning in the dark. The humans had returned, and they were hunting. Days passed since the attack at Ralos Drift, but the encrypted message lingered on Zaxalath's mind. His analysts, the best minds under his command, pored over the data, but the symbols resisted interpretation. Still, the numbers haunted him. He knew what he had seen. Those ships were human. Reports continued to flood in. More convoys had vanished along trade routes near contested sectors. Yet there was a pattern. Zaxlath stood before the galactic map, watching red markers blink across the projected grid. The attacks spiraled inward, closing steadily toward the Council's inner systems. The method was surgical. The humans, if it was them, weren't striking randomly. They were dismantling the Council's infrastructure piece by piece. His suspicions solidified when reports arrived from rebellious colonies. It started small, isolated pockets of unrest on frontier worlds and space stations. But soon, the whispers of rebellion grew louder. Oppressed species, long chafing under Council rule, began to rise up. And everywhere there were rumors of shadowy figures providing weapons, tactics, and inspiration. The same pattern emerged. Governors vanished overnight, supply caches raided, and Council forces abandoned with communications severed. Survivors whispered of advanced weapons, unfamiliar tactics, and leadership that seemed far too coordinated for isolated rebel cells. Zaxlath observed the growing chaos with a mix of admiration and dread. Whoever was orchestrating these events, they were systematically dismantling the power structure that had betrayed them, turning the Council's own allies against it. Zaxalath was sifting through witness reports in his quarters when one freighter captain's testimony caught his attention. They appeared from nowhere, no insignias, silent, like ghosts. I've never seen ships move like that. After they disabled our engines, They left half the cargo intact. Didn't take food, fuel, or luxuries. Just technology, precision instruments, navigational data, and targeting systems. They knew exactly what to take. Zaxlath's claws tapped rhythmically against his desk. It made sense. Humanity's survival depended on salvaging whatever they could, upgrading ships in the shadows. But why now? Why reveal themselves after so long? The Council dismissed this new report like the last one. High Counselor Vorthak's message had been clear. Focus on the war effort. Do not pursue ghosts. But Zaxlath couldn't let it go. He altered his patrol routes, skirting the edges of sectors known for disappearing convoys. He moved carefully, issuing standing orders to avoid engagement. Observation, not confrontation. Then, during a routine patrol near the Autumn Verge, alarms blared. Multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace, the sensor officer reported, her voice tight. Intercept course, not transmitting identification codes. Zaxlath's mandibles tensed. Bring them on screen. The view screen revealed 5 vessels, each cutting through the void with effortless grace, scarred, pieced together from salvaged hulls, but unmistakably human in origin. They bore the scars of a fleet forged through hardship and survival. His crew murmured uneasily. They matched the design from Rylos Drift, the tactical officer added. Zaxlath narrowed his gaze. The lead ship adjusted its course, locking directly onto their position. This time, they weren't ignoring him. They were coming for him. Maintain position. Shields to stand by. Do not lock weapons, Zaxlath ordered calmly. The tension on the bridge thickened as the ships approached, but the humans made no aggressive moves. At less than 500 meters, the lead vessel halted. Commander, we're receiving another transmission, the COAM's officer whispered. Same encryption. Patch it through. The symbols flooded the screen, but this time something changed. A single phrase, partially decrypted, flickered across the display. We remember. Zaxlath's breath caught. He stared at the message, the weight of those 2 words sinking in. This wasn't just survival. This was retribution. Before he could respond, the ships pivoted gracefully and disappeared into hyperspace, leaving nothing but silence and the hum of the bridge's systems. In the following weeks, the attacks escalated. Systems once loyal to the Council began falling into chaos. Counselors responsible for the decision to abandon Earth found themselves hunted. Mysterious disappearances plagued the higher ranks. No public claims were made. No broadcasts declaring revenge. The retaliation was quiet, methodical. Zaxlath pieced together the fragments. Human weapons found in rebel caches. Abandoned Council patrols stripped of their armaments, but with crews left unharmed. Entire defense grids disabled with no fatalities, as if the attackers sought to cripple, not annihilate. Zaxlath stood before the towering figure of High Counselor Vorthak, the cold glow of the Council chamber casting long shadows across the floor. The air between them felt heavy, laden with unspoken tensions. Vorthak's eyes narrowed, mandibles twitching in measured irritation. You are suggesting treason, Commander, Vorthak said, voice sharp as broken glass. These are dangerous accusations. Zaxlath's gaze remained fixed, unflinching. I suggest nothing, Counselor. I bring discrepancies in the transmission logs during the fall of Earth, that is all. Vorthak's expression hardened further, but a flicker of unease rippled beneath his calm exterior. Zaxlath noticed it, a crack in the armor. You overstep your authority, Vorthak continued, stepping closer. This war has stretched us thin. Revisiting a dead world serves no purpose. Perhaps, Zaxlath replied evenly. But the pattern of attacks on our convoys, the rise of insurgent factions, something ties it all together. Ignoring the signs will not make them vanish. A long silence followed. Vorthak's eyes lingered on him, probing for weakness. I will take your concerns under advisement, Commander. Zaxlath recognized the dismissal but did not argue. He inclined his head, turning sharply and exiting the chamber, his claws clicking softly against the cold surface beneath his feet. Back aboard his ship, Zaxlath retreated to his quarters. The confrontation replayed in his mind as he pulled up the transmission logs on his console. His investigation had begun discreetly, but now his path forward teetered on dangerous ground. The logs were fragmented, layers of encoded data obscuring the truth. But there, beneath layers of system redundancies, he found them. Buried messages flagged with Council encryption codes. Most were innocuous, irrelevant signals scattered across the galactic grid, except for one. The timestamp aligned with the precise hour the enemy fleet breached Earth's final defenses. A distress call, originating from Earth's Lunar Command Center, marked with Council-level clearance but never acknowledged. Zaxloth leaned in, mandibles tightening. "Who silenced you?" he muttered. He worked through the night, isolating the encoded stream. Hours passed, the room dark except for the glow of the console. Slowly, patterns emerged. Lines of data redirected, signals rerouted, always circling back to one terminal signature. Counselor Tarnek. The name hung in the air like poison. Days later, Zaxaloth requested an audience with Tarnek, cloaking his intentions beneath the guise of routine war updates. The counselor received him in private, away from the prying eyes of the central chamber. "Commander Zaxloth," Tarnek greeted, arms wide in mock cordiality. "A pleasure, as always." Zaxloth stepped forward, claws interlaced behind his back. "I trust the Council's resources remain focused on strengthening the front lines?" "Of course," Tarnek said, settling into his chair. "But I suspect you did not come here to discuss logistics." Zaxloth's gaze drifted to the far side of the room, noting the faint hum of security drones overhead. His tone remained casual. "I came across something curious in the transmission archives." Tarnek's smile faltered by a fraction. "I wasn't aware that reviewing ancient logs fell within your jurisdiction." "Nor was I," Zaxloth replied, his voice steady, "until the convoy attacks escalated." A long pause followed. Tarnek's gaze hardened as the room's temperature seemed to drop. "Be careful where you tread, Commander." Zaxloth inclined his head but pressed forward. "I found records, transmissions intercepted and suppressed at high levels during Earth's final hour. The patterns trace back to your terminal, Counselor. I assume there is an explanation." Tarnek's mandibles clicked once, twice. Then he rose from his seat and approached Zaxloth with slow, deliberate steps. "There are things beyond your understanding, Commander," Tarnek said, his voice hushed. "The fall of Earth was unfortunate, yes, but sacrifices had to be made for the greater stability of the galaxy." Zaxloth's secondary hearts quickened. He recognized the veiled threat beneath Tarnek's words. "And what of the insurgents now operating with human technology?" Zaxloth asked, voice low. "Are they part of that same stability?" Tarnek smiled faintly, but it did not reach his eyes. "You misunderstand. This war demands hard choices, choices you cannot fathom." Zaxloth stepped back, bowing his head in mock submission. "Perhaps you are right, Counselor. I will trouble you no further." Returning to his ship, Zaxloth paced his quarters, his mind racing. Tarnek had confirmed his suspicions without realizing it. The Council had betrayed Earth, deliberately. But proof was elusive. He reopened the logs, dissecting every piece of data with renewed vigor. Tarnek's involvement was clear, but the network of betrayal extended beyond one counselor. There were others, quiet participants in Earth's fall. As his analysis deepened, Zaxaloth intercepted a series of encrypted signals originating from Tarnek's office. They were fresh, recent transmissions buried under diplomatic channels. He rerouted the stream through his private systems, decrypting one line at a time. The contents chilled him. Orders to divert patrols, adjust fleet trajectories, create pathways, open corridors for unidentified strike forces. Among the data, he found signatures identical to the vessels that had attacked the convoys. Zaxloth reclined in his chair, exhaling slowly, claws tapping lightly against the console. "You didn't just abandon Earth," he whispered. The pieces clicked into place. The Council hadn't simply left humanity to die. They had aligned with Earth's enemies, or at least those they found useful. But humanity had survived, and now they were striking back. Zaxlath knew his time for silent observation was drawing to a close. For now, he would watch. But when the humans returned, he would not stand in their way. He didn't have to wait long. The stars above the colony of Dratha flickered unnaturally as the first ships broke from hyperspace. Zaxlath watched from the bridge of his battlecruiser, the display screen expanding to reveal a fleet unlike any he had seen in cycles. The vessels bore no council insignia, but their construction was unmistakable, human. Scarred, hardened ships held together by patchwork plating and salvaged components. And they were not alone. Trailing them were insurgent vessels of varying designs, piloted by species long oppressed by the Council's iron grip. This was no ordinary fleet. It was a coalition. "Commander," his second-in-command spoke, tension threading his voice. "They've come to Dratha." Zaxlath's claws tightened behind his back as he watched the human ships descend into orbit. No weapons fired, no hostile maneuvers, but the message was clear. This was not a diplomatic visit. "They're targeting the planetary defenses," the tactical officer reported. "But only those operated by Council overseers. Local militia forces are untouched." Zaxlath remained silent, observing the scene unfold with clinical detachment. The humans disabled key stations with precision, launching boarding pods that clamped onto the orbital platforms. There were no distress signals from Dratha's surface, no cries for help. Only silence, broken by the rhythmic pulse of ion thrusters. Minutes passed. One by one, stations fell dark, their command centers overtaken without resistance. "Commander," the comms officer began hesitantly. "Councillor Tarnek is requesting status updates from all patrols. He demands to know why we are not intervening." Zaxlath's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Tell him our forces encountered navigation anomalies and are recalibrating sensor arrays. Ensure the message is delayed by several minutes before transmission." The officer hesitated. "Sir, if we do not engage—" "I know," Zaxlath interrupted softly. "Relay the message." The comms officer complied, though tension lingered in the air like a blade suspended above the crew's heads. They all knew what this was. They were not witnesses to a battle. This was an execution. Hours passed before the last platform went dark. The human fleet remained, stationed above Dratha like silent sentinels. A soft chime echoed from Zaxlath's console. "Transmission incoming," the comms officer reported. "It's them. Patch it through." The screen flickered, but no image appeared. Only a line of text, encrypted yet unmistakable. "We remember. Tarnek falls next." Zaxlath exhaled, his secondary heart steady despite the weight of the words. He glanced over his shoulder at the bridge crew. They had seen it too. None spoke. "We maintain course," Zaxlath ordered, stepping down from the command dais. His tone left no room for argument. "Let it happen." Zaxlath stood on the bridge of his battlecruiser, eyes fixed on the tactical display as the last of the insurgent vessels faded into hyperspace. The silent transmission still lingered on his console. "We remember. Tarnek falls next." His claws tapped lightly against the armrest, the weight of the message pressing into the silence that filled the bridge. "Commander," his second-in-command spoke quietly, careful not to disturb the moment. "Reports indicate the insurgent fleet is moving toward the core systems. What are your orders?" Zaxlath straightened, mandibles clicking softly in thought. He stared out at the stars beyond the viewport. There was no question where the humans were headed after Tarnek's fall. The Galactic Council's homeworld, the heart of the Empire. "Plot a course to the Council chamber," Zaxlath ordered. "I want to be there when they arrive." The crew exchanged silent glances but obeyed without hesitation. No one questioned his decision. There was an inevitability to what was coming. Zaxlath intended to witness it firsthand. The outer perimeter of the Galactic Council's homeworld trembled under the weight of distant shadows. Beyond the icy rings of defense platforms and warships stationed in high orbit, a silent armada emerged from the veil of hyperspace. Zaxlath stood at the far end of the Council chamber, gazing out through the towering observation panels as the first ships took position. No alarms blared, no immediate broadcasts followed. but the tension in the room grew thick and suffocating, like smoke after a distant explosion. The humans had arrived. Scarred warships, their hulls patched with irregular plating, held formation in perfect silence. Behind them followed vessels of insurgent factions, smaller but no less lethal. The chamber buzzed with hushed, urgent whispers. Counselors huddled at their stations, their voices rising in panicked crescendos as realization dawned. How did they bypass the outer systems without detection? One of the counselors barked, slamming his palm against the curved console. Zaxlath's gaze shifted to the far right of the display. A line of drifting patrol ships floated near the orbital platforms, engines cold. Their comms were silent, navigation arrays intact but dormant. They're using Tarnek's clearance, Zaxlath said, his voice low. His jurisdiction granted access to internal defense pathways and outer patrol rotations. His fall opened the way. At that, the room fell into stunned silence. A series of flashing red markers pulsed across the holomap, each representing a disabled station or altered patrol route. Tarnek's defeat hadn't just fractured his fleets, it had left the entire outer perimeter vulnerable. The humans had seized more than just territory. They had seized the keys to the gates. The counselors turned to the Supreme Overseer's seat, where Vorthak sat frozen, claws gripping the edge of the table. Zaxlath caught the flicker of dread crossing the High Counselor's expression, the same recognition that had lingered in his own mind for weeks. "Activate the defense grid," Vorthak ordered, though his voice trembled beneath the weight of authority. "Summon the fleet." No one moved. Zaxlath shifted slightly, casting a glance toward the officers manning the long-range stations along the chamber's perimeter. One by one, they looked away from their screens. "There are no reinforcements," one officer finally admitted. Commander Tarnek's task force was the last to hold the outer routes. His defeat left those sectors exposed. Patrols report navigation disruptions. They won't arrive in time. Vorthak's mandibles flared in disbelief. What of the warships in high orbit? Zaxlath's eyes didn't leave the tactical display as the blockade pressed closer. The humans hadn't stormed the gates. They had slipped inside while the council was still reeling. "They were the first to fall," Zaxlath said, his voice low but certain. "Tarnek's fall gave them access to our clearance codes. The pathways were opened from within." A harsh silence thickened the chamber. Through the towering observation panels, the lead human dreadnought inched closer. Its hull bore no insignia, but Zaxlath recognized the model, an Earth-built warship long thought lost. A relic from the fall of Saul, reforged in the fires of vengeance. "They've taken the orbital platforms," an aide reported, barely able to contain his disbelief. "Planetary defenses are dark. They're descending." Vorthak's voice cracked. "This is treason. I demand a response. Commander Zaxlath, lead your forces and—" "No." The word fell like a hammer. Zaxlath did not look at Vorthak, his eyes fixed on the descending shuttles that passed through the thinning clouds. "We have nothing to gain by interfering." The chamber grew heavier, the counselors standing rigid in their seats. Orders flickered across their consoles, futile commands as every route to escape illuminated in red. Blocked. Controlled. The humans hadn't fired a single shot. "They're waiting," Zaxlath muttered, stepping toward the council's central platform. He stood beside Vorthak, gazing down as the first boarding craft made contact with the surface. The echoes of footsteps followed. One by one, the councilors' gazes shifted to the chamber's sealed entrance. The sound grew louder, measured, deliberate. The humans had arrived. Zaxlath didn't turn as the doors slid open with a soft hiss. The lead figure stepped through, flanked by soldiers in battle-worn armor. His uniform bore no rank, no markings, yet the authority radiated from him like gravity. His gaze swept over the room, lingering for mere seconds on each face. His eyes locked onto Vorthak. The Supreme Overseer remained frozen in his seat, mandibles quivering. The soldiers crossed the floor without a word. There was no declaration of victory, no display of force. They were not conquerors. They were here to clean the rot. Two soldiers stepped behind Vorthak. His claws dug into the armrests of his throne. "This is an outrage," he hissed, though his voice faltered. "I am the Supreme Overseer of the Galactic Council. I demand! A gloved hand fell on his shoulder, cutting him short. The human commander's head tilted slightly, studying him with quiet finality. Zaxlath watched as the soldiers moved from one counselor to the next, checking identifications, referencing data. One by one, those complicit in Earth's abandonment were marked with a nod. None resisted. Some counselors rose shakily, invoking protocols, but the words faded. The humans listened to nothing. Only action remained. As Vorthak was pulled from his seat, his gaze snapped to Zaxlath. You let them in. You did nothing. Zaxlath met his eyes calmly. I told you. We have nothing to gain by interfering. Vorthak's protests grew faint as the chamber doors closed behind him. The remaining counselors sat in silence, their eyes glued to their screens, afraid to look at one another. Zaxlath's gaze shifted to the human commander, standing near the center of the chamber. For a fleeting moment, their gazes met. There was no malice, only the quiet understanding that everything had already been decided. The human commander gave a small nod. One by one, the soldiers filed out, guiding the detained counselors to the waiting shuttles. The lights flickered, casting long shadows across empty seats. Zaxlath remained still, eyes lingering on the space where Vorthak once sat. The council hadn't fallen by force. It had been dismantled by precision, by ghosts who had returned to claim their due. They will not return, Zaxlath said softly to the remaining counselors, his voice echoing against the walls. Unless you give them a reason to. He turned and stepped out of the chamber, his footsteps echoing down the corridors of a fallen council. Hey there again. I'm glad you've come so far. Hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to hit the like button and the subscribe button. This is really important to the channel. Really important. And I have one more thing for you. I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.